Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the day 4 of IWEEK. So my name is Ahmad, and I will be your facilitator for these sessions. So in the previous sessions, we have learned a very insightful material on tourism marketing in the era of COVID-19 from Dr. Yulia Widyaningsih. And I believe that this session today also will be very interesting. So now for our current sessions, we have a very special speaker who is going to talk about the sustainable and green supply chains, so we're going to discuss about how do we integrate eco-friendly aspects into conventional supply chain management practice in order to become environmentally conducive. So, welcome to IWEEK, Dr. Naima Saeed. How are you doing today?
I'm fine, thank you. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Yeah, thank you very much also for coming here. Good morning over there. I believe
Yeah.
we are very happy and honored to have you here today, Dr. Naima Saeed. Thank you very much for coming to this event virtually. Hopefully someday you can go to our university to have another event. Yeah.
Of course,
So
hopefully.
yeah. So please let me introduce yourself a bit to the participant first. So Dr. Naima Saeed is an associate professor of supply chain management at the School of Business and Law at the University of Agder, Norway. She has a Ph.D. in logistics from Molde University College, Norway, with a specialization in maritime economics. Her current research is focused on port competitions and cooperations, maritime connectivity, and measures to improve port efficiency. Dr. Naima Said has also published papers in well-acknowledged international peer-reviewed scientific journals such as the European Journal of Operational Research, Computers in Industry, Transportation Science, Maritime Economics and Logistics, and also Maritime Policy and Management. So, Dr. Naima Said, you will have 2 hours to deliver the material and answer questions from participants, and you are free to navigate the forum in the way that you are comfortable. So you may deliver the material first and then hold the Q&A sessions later on, or you may deliver the material and engage in a discussion at the same time. So it's all up to you, Dr. Naima. Okay, I think that's it from me. I know everyone is already excited about this session. So, Dr. Naima Said, all the time is yours.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I will share my screen.
Yeah.
So, good morning from Norway and good afternoon in Indonesia. Thank you very much for your kind introduction. So, my name is Naima Saeed, and today I will give a lecture on green and sustainable supply chain. So we know that this is a very broad topic. It's a complete subject. It's an independent field. It has been emerged as independent field. So there is a lot of things that can be covered. So what I tried to make it more like a kind of the general information related to the green and sustainable supply chain management instead of making it more academic. So the last part of the lecture would be more academic, but the major part of this lecture is the general information about what is meant by the green, what is meant by sustainable, and how these things have been practiced and why there is so much focus on sustainability and green supply chain. So personally, you have given me option that I can give the lecture first and then take the question answer session later. But personally, I prefer that it should be a kind of the discussion. So we should be engaged at the same time. And it would be helpful for me to understand whether the audience, they are following the topic or not, or whether they have anything to say at that specific moment. So please feel free to interrupt me either by sending your message on chat box, or you can just turn on your microphone and you can ask the question. So the outline of today's lecture is that I will cover 3 fields. The first is the global environmental trends, because we all know that green and sustainable supply chain is related to the environment. So we need to consider the global pressure we are feeling these days. And because of this global environmental pressure, we are focusing too much on the green practices. Then I will discuss briefly sustainability framework and corporate social responsibility, which must be followed by the business firms. And then at the end, I will give you a brief introduction and the research, what has been done so far and what is missing in the field of green supply chain management. So I hope this part would be helpful for you for your future research, for your master thesis, if you or in future, if you want to do a research for industry or for academics to pick the relevant topic which needs attention in this field. Okay, so any questions so far? So if no question, then I will start with the definition of the sustainable supply chain management. So before going into the definition of the sustainable supply chain management, I wish to start from the sustainability, what is meant by sustainability. So I hope during this week you have heard and learned a lot about sustainability, and it can be described in different ways, but in a very simple way. When we set sustainability, it means that we should involve the methods in the business world or in the practical world that should not completely use the natural resources, or they should not at least destroy the natural resources, because we all know that we need the natural resources for the production, for the consumption, for the food, for agriculture, for all these activities. So when we talk about the sustainability, it means that we should apply the methods that should not destroy the resources or the natural resources. We need these natural resources for our future generation. And then when we talk about the sustainable development, then again, there are a number of definitions, but in very simple terms, a very good definition that was given by the former Prime Minister of Norway, it is that when we said the sustainable development, it means that we should meet the needs of the current or the present time without compromising the ability of the future generations to meet their needs. So it means that we should leave the resources and other things for the future generation. We should think about the future. We should not think about only the present or the current time. So this is the sustainable development. So when we talk about the sustainable supply chain management, again, I would like to explain what is the supply chain or supply chain management. Any idea? So if you ask you any question, please do not feel embarrassed, because I'm not expecting that you should give me the answer or the correct answer. I'm just asking this question that to know that how deep I should go into the subject. So if you already know what is supply chain and supply chain management, then I can explain it briefly. If you don't know, then I can explain it in a little bit detail so that you should get what we are talking about. Okay, any idea what is supply chain?
Ma'am, may I?
Yes, please.
So what I know about supply chain is a global network used to deliver products from products or services from raw material to the end customers.
Excellent. Thank you very much. It's a very brief and good definition. And this is very interesting that you mentioned global network. So it's very important because nowadays, because of globalization and internationalization, we cannot say that any supply chain is 100% local. There is some global aspect. Either your suppliers are global or your customers, of course, are global. So yes, it's very good point. It's a global network, and the global network, it consists of different players. And there are a large number of the players in global supply chain, especially when we talk about the global supply chain. According to one OECD document, in a global supply chain, there are at least 20 players, and there could be more than 20 players. But the most important players in any supply chain or in the global supply chain, they are the suppliers. Suppliers are the business firms that provide raw material or input to the focal firm. And then, of course, we have a focal firm that is involved in the manufacturing of the final goods. by using these raw materials. And then we have warehouse and distributor and logistics service provider and the transport service provider, because when the focal firm will get the product from the suppliers, then they need transport service provider and logistics service provider. And when they will deliver it to the final customer, then they need retailers and they need warehouse and logistics service provider and transport service provider. So these are the main players in any supply chain. And when we talk about the sustainable supply chain, one thing is that in any supply chain, when we talk about the supply chain management, it's basically that we need to manage this whole supply chain. The reason is that nowadays the competition is not between the individual firms. For instance, if I have a firm and I produce, for example, cars, then I am not competing with another firm who is also producing the cars, but I am competing with their supply chain. So nowadays there is a competition between supply chain instead of a competition between individual firms. So that's why it is not a wise strategy that I should focus only on my firms. I should be concerned about what my suppliers are doing. I should be concerned about what my customers are demanding, and I should be concerned about the distributor and the transport service provider. So for instance, if I am practicing the sustainability, but my supplier is not practicing a sustainability, then it will affect my reputation too. Or if, for instance, my supplier, this happens in the case of H&M, that if they are involved in any unethical activity, for instance, if they are involved in child labor, so if they will be highlighted in media, then it will not affect only their reputation, it will affect my reputation too, because I am doing a business with the suppliers who is involved in any kind of the unethical behavior. So that's why we need to think out of our company, and we need to think about the whole supply chain if we want to be a competitive in this international business setting. So that's why the supply chains are competing with each other. And of course, it is very easy to say that I need to be concerned about my supplier. I should check what they are doing, and I should look at the other aspect of the supply chain, but practically it is very difficult. So imagine if any big company, they have 200 suppliers. So how is it possible that they will manage all the 200 suppliers? How they can check whether they are following the environmental practice or not? So practically it is very difficult, although it's not impossible, but it's difficult to manage the whole supply chain. And why it is difficult, another important thing is that this supply chain, in most of the cases, it consists of the independent players, independent companies. So I cannot control any independent company, or I cannot ask them that you should do this. I can ask my employee that we need to follow these practices, but of course I cannot pressurize or I cannot control any independent company. Of course, we can have like an informal collaboration, informal understanding or trust, which we usually develop with the passage of the time. Or of course, the business firms also know that it's important for them to have a good business reputation, so they also prefer to cooperate. So informal cooperation is possible, but more integration and more control, it's a bit challenging and difficult. So that's why when we talk about the supply chain management, the one thing which has been focused by the researcher is the collaboration, information sharing. It's very important we should share information. So what my supplier is doing, what my distributor is doing, and what I am doing. And this information is important for different aspects. For instance, you have learned about the bullwhip effect. So we can control the bullwhip effect if we will have the information. Similarly, we can have the sustainable practices in our supply chain if we can share the information with each other. Okay, so when we talk about the supply chain from the perspective of the sustainable supply chain, it means that we should make sure that in the traditional supply chain, which I have just described to you, it follows the environmental friendly practices. So I will come back to this in more detail when I will explain the green supply chain management. But for the time being, we may want to make sure that in the traditional supply chain, we should ensure that we are following the environmentally friendly practices. So we will learn during the rest of the lecture that what do we mean by the environmental friendly practices. Okay, any question or comment? When I share the full screen, I cannot see the chat box. So if, for instance, you have written something on chat box, please let me know, or it's better that if you turn off your speaker microphone and turn on your microphone and let me know what, if you want to disagree with any point, feel free to disagree or feel free to share your knowledge or your experience. Okay, so before going into detail about the sustainability and the environmental practices, I want to do a short brainstorming, not more than 5 words, because I just explained to you what is sustainable supply chain. My question is that why should we be sustainable, in your opinion? So you can just write 3 keywords, at least 1 word or maximum 3 keywords, to let me know that in your opinion, why should we be sustainable? Okay, so we will take off. Yes, please.
Okay, I'm sorry. May I answer that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Okay, maybe I think it's 4 words. Maybe it's, I mean, that's a lot. It's because there's no planet B. I think that's it for my answer.
Well, very interesting. Very nice. So we have no other option. We have to live in this earth. So we have to take care of it.
Yeah.
So, this is very clever answer. Yeah, I like your answer. This is our earth, and this is the earth for our future generation. So we need to take care of it. There is no other option. Any other answer? Yes, please.
I was thinking it's only 2 words, which is a collaborative effort.
A collaborative effort is a part of the sustainability. So, for instance, if we want to be sustainable, we need to collaborate. Yeah, this is correct. But the question is that why should we be sustainable? Why there is a need for sustainability? So, as your class fellow mentioned, that we have no other option, but we do not have any planet B, so we need to take care of it. So, what are the reasons? It could be economic reason if you are doing a business. It could be a social reason if you are a very good citizen. It could be a political reason. So there could be a number of the reasons. So I just want to know your point of view about this.
May I?
Yes, please.
For me, because the resources is limited, natural resources is limited.
Yes. So we have a limited resources in this world, and this is also one part of the definition of the general economics, not only from the perspective of the sustainability, that resources are limited. So we have to utilize them. So the same applies here, that we have a limited resources. So it's not possible that you will consume all trees. So of course, we need to use the trees or the plants, but at the same time, we need to make sure that they should not be vanished away from the earth. So we need to plant them too. So we need to take these measures. Okay. Any other?
May I, ma'am?
May I, Miss Saeed?
Okay.
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Nicholas or me?
I think you can go first.
Okay, thank you, Nicholas. So I have one word, maybe regeneration, because if we are not obtaining a sustainable action from now on, our generation will have no future.
Okay, future. Yes, this is very important. Excellent. We need to think about the future. And this is what is mentioned in the definition of the sustainable development, which I explained to you, that we need to think about the future generation. So we need to think about the future. Excellent.
May I add
Yes,
something?
please.
Okay, thank you, first of all. I think in my opinion, I want to add from the business perspective. I think sustainable, why we should be sustainable, because it is profitability. Because sustainability is actually seeking profitability in a long term. So I think that's my opinion, ma'am. Thank you.
Yes, excellent. This is a very good answer, because in today's world, when there is so much awareness among the society, among the people about the sustainability, so there is a pressure from the customers that on the firms that they should follow the sustainable practices. So nowadays, the firms they even highlight on their website the corporate social responsibility or the other environmental practices or the sustainable practices they are following, because they know that it will affect their reputation. And if you will have a good reputation, then you will get more market share. And when you will get more market share, and of course your profit will increase, as you mentioned. Okay, excellent. Any other opinion? Anyone else? Yes, please.
The reasoning is more to the social part. It helps to improve health for like the world and also for the people.
Yes, it's good for the health, because, for instance, if there would be more CO2 emission, then it will affect the health of the people and health of the other creatures in the world. So, of course, it is important for health. Any other point you would like to add?
May I add that I think it is also for the sake of our younger generation, for the next generation, so that they can still live on our earth healthily and having a better life, probably less pollution than our life right now.
Yeah, of course. So future is very important, and with future comes resources, generation, human being, everything. So we need to consider them. Any other point would you like to add? Well, very nice. It's very nice to hear your voices. So especially when I give the online lectures or online teaching, then I feel very good when students are involved in the discussion. Then it's more encouraging and motivating for the lectures too. So very nice to hear your brilliant ideas. So yeah, this is the endless discussion. We can come up with 100 of the variables or the indicators that can describe the need for sustainability. So I have taken from information from one research article where they did this analysis and review that why should we be sustainable. And then you can see that here they come up with a large number of the factors. So here you will see that they have divided them into two categories. The one is the internal and the second one is the external. In internal category, they have about 16 factors, and in the external category, they have about 18 factors. So if we combine all of them, so they are in total, they are more than 30 factors. But of course, we can come up with more than 30 factors too. So the internal factors, they are more related to, as I told you, that in the supply chain, we have a main focal company. For instance, if we talk about the supply chain of McDonald's, then what McDonald's is concerned with within their four wall, that is the internal. And when McDonald's is concerned about their suppliers, about their customers, then this is the external factors. So in the internal factors, one thing is, for instance, innovation. So why they have mentioned innovation? The reason is that in today's world, if the business firms, they want to be successful, it's not necessary that they should be a big company, because previously, like in about 1970s, 80s, there was a concept that if you want to be a successful, you should be big. The more you big, the more you can catch the market share and you can be successful. But nowadays, the concept is that even a small firm in the market, they can be successful, but the criteria is that they should be innovative. So if they will introduce anything new, they can be successful. Even the existing firms, like we take the example of Apple and Samsung, you will see that every time they introduce the new smartphone and they introduce the new features, because they know that if they want to compete with each other, they want to remain innovative. So they need to do something new. So if you want to be innovative, and then one way of doing the innovation is to introduce the green practices. So then you are doing something different from your competitor if you are following number of the green practices. And then there is a profit and growth, as we had discussed, that it increased the profit and growth and so on. And then the external factors is, for instance, stakeholders' expectation. For instance, McDonald's customers, they expect that this service provider, they should follow the green practices. So these internal and external factors, there are a number of factors, but what we can do, that we can further divide these factors into two categories on the basis of what we have been discussing about the environment, about the society, all these things. So here you will see that I have divided these two factors further into two categories. So in this side, there are factors that are more related to social. So as we had discussed this point during the discussion too, that this is the society expect us. For instance, society expect us that we should be ethical, and society expect us that we should take care of each other's expectations, so stakeholders' expectations. And if we want to attract and maintain labor, then we need to do a sustainable practice. If we want to develop a trust among the stakeholders, among the customers, then we need to do the sustainability. So, and of course, for the good leadership, leaders nowadays at a political level, they are also in their speeches, they mention about the sustainability because they know that the citizens in their country, they are concerned about it. And then the personal engagement, pollution prevention, as you mentioned, we need to protect the environment and to access the natural resources. On the right side, there are factors which are more economic and political. For instance, if you want to increase the productivity, if you want to increase the profit, which we had discussed, you need to be sustainable. If you want to improve the quality, you need to do the sustainability. If you want to be innovative, you can do this by practicing sustainability. And then the other thing is, for instance, international treaties, international laws. For instance, IMO, International Maritime Organizations, they have made it clear to all the sea nations that they should try to follow the fuels that is less CO2 emission. So they have put the target that by 2050, we want to have zero emission. And then the political lobbies and of course the national government. So all these are the economic and political factors, and then we have social factors. So these are the pressure from the different sides. So it's not only a business pressure from the customers, but it's also political pressure, social pressure, and economic pressure. Although this is a positive pressure, not a negative pressure, but everyone expects that we should follow the sustainability. Okay, then I will briefly discuss some environmental trends and some information about the sustainability in general. So when we talk about the sustainability, it's just we all know about it and we have seen it, but just to give you a quick overview. For instance, here you can see that this is the burnt forest. So of course, this is not a sustainable practice. We should not do this. So when we say that how we can be sustainable, it means that we should not do any kind of the activity that destroy the natural resources. So in the long term, it is recommended that the increased food production, of course, we need to cultivate the land, we need to cut the trees, but increased food productions depends on using the natural resources sustainably, not destroying them. So in the beginning, when I told you a very basic definition of sustainability, that also mentioned that we should not destroy the resources. So please use the resources, but do not destroy them. And then again, this is not a sustainable practice. So we need to clean our land, we need to clean our ocean, we need to clean our water. So you can see that this kind of the garbage on the place near the water. So soon it will be the part of the water and it will affect the clean water. And we have seen and heard many posts in social media where people talk about cleaning the beaches, and because they are concerned about the environment. So we need to clean our ocean, we need to clean our water, because this will affect our health, and this will affect in the long term our future generation would not be able to access the clean water. Again, this is not a sustainable practice. You can see a lot of pollution. I will show you in few minutes that how the industrial revolution has affected the environment. So we, of course, we need to have the industrial development, because we need products and services. We need to manufacture the things. But at the same time, we should do it in such a way that it should not destroy the resources. So here it is destroying the environment, which will affect the climate change, and which will also affect our health. Again, this is not sustainable. Of course, it is very common, and I am quite sure in Indonesia, like in Jakarta, you must have seen and experienced this. In Norway, luckily, we have a very less population, about 5.5 million. So we hardly see any kind of the things. Sometimes during the peak hours in Oslo, or even in my city, which is a very small city, in peak hours when people are coming from their office and going home, we can sometimes see this. But in big cities like New York, or in Tokyo, or in Hong Kong, it's very common to see this. So this is also, it results in the pollution, and it also results in the long waiting time, which is not good from the economic and social perspective. So these are the things which we see in daily life, but we need to recall that how can we avoid them, or how can we overcome this kind of the situation. Okay, now I will go into detail about the global environmental trends, which is more related to what I asked you in the very beginning, that why we need to be sustainable. In order to understand that why we need to be sustainable, we should understand that how the things are affecting our environment, how dangerous it is, and what should we do to protect our environment, our Earth, because there is no planet B. We need to live here. So I will give you some examples. So here it is the ecological footprint by country for the year 2021. So here you will see that we have two things. One is the demand side, demand for natural resources. So we human beings, we demand for natural resources. And then there is a supply side, because as you mentioned that the resources are limited. So supply is limited. So demand could be unlimited, but we need to think about that the supply is limited. So when we talk about the ecological footprint, it is basically a matrix that measures the human demand on natural capital, or the quantity of the nature that the human beings they need or they take to support a given populations or economy. So the ecological footprint, you will see this is the ecological footprint, this is the demand side, and here you will see the biocapacity. Biocapacity is basically the supply side. So the supply side of the ecological footprint represents the productivity of its ecological assets. For instance, we have a forest, we have an agricultural land, we have a water. So how much productive is all these natural resources? This is the supply side. So when we talk about the biocapacity, it is basically the capacity of a given biologically productive area to generate a supply of renewable resources and to absorb the waste. So actually what in this picture we see that what people are demanding, how much they are demanding for natural resources, and how much natural resources are capable of fulfilling their demand. So if the demand is more than the supply, it means that we have the situation of the deficit. So in the ideal situation, if we want to be sustainable, then the supply should be greater than demand, or at least demand and supply should be equal. But unfortunately, this is not the case. So if you look at the whole world, the global world, in the global world, there is a deficit because the world average ecological footprint, the demand is 2.75 global hectares per person, or we can say that 22.6 billion they demand in the whole world people. And the supply, average supply or average biocapacity is 1.63 global hectares. So it means that in the world, there is a deficit of 1.1 global hectares per person. Okay, so demand is more than, so there is a world deficit. But if you look at the region or if you look at the individual countries, then this deficit, of course, in all cases, you will see the deficit, but it varies from country to country, from nation to nation. So for instance, in China, we see that China is the big country and it's a emerging economic power. So here the China has the demand of 3.71 hectares per capita and its supply is 0.92. So it has a big deficit, which is 3,435. So you can imagine that currently we are in the deficit. We do not have the natural resources to fulfill our demand. So it means that we are already having a limited resources. So imagine what we will leave for the next generation. So if we are already having a deficit. Now, if you look at the United States, then United States has a ecological deficit of 1,416. So it's about half of the China's, but still they have a deficit. If you look at the India, because India is the third biggest country in terms of the green gas emissions, so its deficit is 878. If you look at the Japan, luckily Japan has minus 547. And if you look at the United Kingdom, then United Kingdom has only minus 483. But all of them have a deficit, and China is number one in terms of the deficit because of their big populations and because of their lot of production and industrial revolutions and because of their economic activities. So it's a good to see the figure of your country so that we should know that where we are standing and what should we do to avoid it. Okay. Any comment? Would you like to add something from your experience? Or okay, then another global trend. This is known as planetary boundaries. And this topic, the researchers, they have started to analyze this since 2000. So it's not a very old topic. So this information I have taken from the source written in 2015. So when we talk about the planetary boundaries, it means that we want to have a look. This is our Earth. Like I love this comment that we have on no planet B. So this is our own planet where we are standing. And here there are different activities that are affecting the environment. And here we can see the different circles. So for instance, I will come back to these activities. First, I would like to explain the different colors and circles. So the circle where we have this green color, it means that this is the safe area. So if we are consuming or using the resources within this circle, it means that there is no risk involved. We are safe. Then we have another circle, and we have a yellow color below this circle. And when we will use the resources within this circle, then we are in the situation of the risk, but it is not very high risk. It is a risk, but not very dangerous. And then we have last circle where there is orange area below this circle. And if we are doing the activities within this circle, it means that we are in a very high risk situation. Okay, so I will explain some of these. For instance, we all know about the ozone. And we know that the ozone layer, it protects us from the UV ultrasound radiation from sun. And we all know that there is a hole, which scared us, that the hole means that the ozone layer would no longer would be able to highly protect us from the UV layers. And if this layer will reduce, it means that more UV layers will reach in our planet, and it will affect our skin, and we might face the skin cancer, or it also can affect the plants. So luckily, the governments, they have taken a measure, and they have to some extent stopped it. So in terms of the ozone layer, we are in the safe area, we are in the green area, but we should not forget about it, that we need to protect it. And then we all know about the climate change, like nowadays in Norway, we are having a very hot weather. And in Norway, we are not prepared for it that much, although we know about the climate change. But still, as you know, that it's a very cold country. So even I was feeling at home that I should have a AC these days. It's a very, very hot, or at least a fan. So it's a very funny when I tell this with my friends in Pakistan or in Australia, that it's a very hot in Norway. So they laugh at me. They don't believe, but it is true that it's in summer, it's becoming very hot. So the climate change, we are in the risk area, but luckily we are not in a very high risk area. So this does not mean that we should ignore it. It means that we need to come back to the green area for this. And then we have another, which is very important, that is the biodiversity. So we are having a loss of biodiversity. So biodiversity is basically the variations of the different species of the plants and the animals. So if we have a more variety of plants and animals, it will be good for our environment, our health. If we will have a less species, then it means that we would not be able to protect our environment. So unfortunately, we are facing the loss of biodiversity, and especially since 1950, this is increasing because of these industrial revolutions. They are using more land and more natural area for the industrial production. Okay, then another thing which is dangerous is the biochemical flows. So we all know that we need nitrogen and phosphorus. These are very important for the environment. But we are consuming too much nitrogen and phosphorus for the industrial productions and for other uses. We are using too much nitrogen and too much phosphorus, that we are in a very critical situation. We are in a very high risk situation. So we need to take the measures so that we should reduce the consumption of nitrogen and phosphorus, and we should try to go back to this green area. So this shows these planetary boundaries. This shows that how the different aspects are in different categories. It could be high risk, low risk, or ideally it should be in the green situation. So if we can stop the ozone or protect the ozone layer, we can do the other things too. But we need to be aware of it, and we need to take measures to do this. Okay, any question or comment? And then comes the global trends, CO2 emissions, carbon dioxide emissions. We know that it affects our health, and we need to stop it. And one of the reasons of the climate change, I just complained to you about the hot weather. This is because of the CO2 emission. So if we want to have a good climate, or if you want to have a control on climate change, we should reduce the CO2 emission. So interesting thing is that on average in the whole world, overall the CO2 emission has started to increase since 1900. Before the Industrial Revolution, there was very less CO2 emission, but since 1900, it has started to increase. So you will see that everything has a positive and negative effect. So Industrial Revolution brings a lot of good things for the human being, but at the same time, it brings a negative, and one of the negative aspect is the CO2 emission. So the world average, it is continuously increasing. But in this chart, we can see the CO2 emissions in terms of the countries, which is very interesting. And this will also help us that what should we do and where we stand as a nation or as a country. So here you will see that it's mentioned from 1850 until 2019. The interesting thing is that in 1900 and even until 1950, the biggest part of the CO2 emission was from the Europe and from the United States. So you will see that United States, it's a green part. Sorry, I want to put the cursor and then it move the slide. So here you will see that green part is the is United States, and this blue part is Europe. So from 1900 to 1950, Europe and United States, they share the biggest part of the CO2 emission. And of course, the reason was that they were more involved in industry and in economic activities. But nowadays, the trend has moved towards Asia and towards China, because like in Asia, like Indonesia, Malaysia, Korea, Singapore, they are the strong economic power, and of course China. So now they are doing more manufacturing of the goods and services and other economic activities. So compared to United States and Europe, Asia and especially China, they share the biggest part of the CO2 emission. So you will see that there is a correlation between the economic activity and CO2 emission. So you are doing more economic activity, more industry, more manufacturing, then it means that more you are emitting CO2. And then this diagram shows the CO2 emissions average for the each year. If we have here, you will see the 0, and then we have a positive and the negative values. If we have a positive value, it means that the CO2 emission is higher compared to the previous year. If we have a negative value, it means that the CO2 emission is lower compared to the previous year. So here you will see that there is a lot of the fluctuations, and since last few since last few years, you will see that it is not negative, it is positive, but luckily this positive growth is less, or it's a bit stable. So we are doing something since last couple of years to control it, but still there is an increase in the CO2 emission. Now this is very interesting, and here we will talk about the global temperature, which is related to the climate change. And here this figure, it shows the increase in temperature in the last 120 years. So we are comparing the performance with the past 120 years. This will help us to imagine the future 100 years. So where we will be standing, not we, but our generation, of course, future generation in the next 100 years. So the increase in temperature in the last 120 years. So when we have this blue area, it shows that the temperature is below in 120 years, and red area shows that the temperature on average is above, the temperature is above the average of the 120 years. So here you will see that since the past years, there is a movement to the red. There is something blue which has come more light blue, and then it has become light red and then dark red. Here you can see the dark red. So, and here you can see that the previously it has been more different shades of the blue color. Okay, I don't know, when do you want to take a break? Maybe after 1 hour we can take a 10 minutes break, or if you want to take a break now, I don't know. Please feel free to say. Or we can continue with this and finish it before the break, if you are happy. Okay, and then we have again two diagrams that explain the global temperature. So on the right side, this diagram, this shows that the 2020 was the record warm area in the history. It was the second warmest year in the history. And here you can see the difference from the average temperature. And the blue line again shows when the temperature is below average, and this red or dark color shows that it is the above average. So this shows the world in 2020. So here you will see that very few parts of the world, and maybe Norway is in among these blue parts of the world, that have a temperature below average, while most of the world, it has a dark area. And here you can see it's a very dark shaded area. So it means that they experienced the hottest weather in 2020. And then, like the previous diagram, this diagram also shows the temperature, change in temperature in terms of 1 degree Fahrenheit from 1990 till 2019. So they have taken the average from 1990 to 2019. So if the countries are in the blue area, it means that their temperature is 1 Fahrenheit below the average. And if they are in this dark orange and red area, it means that their temperature is above 1 Fahrenheit above the average of 1990 to 2019. So here you can see that we see very few countries that have a temperature below the average, while most of the countries, they have a temperature above the average, 1 Fahrenheit above the average. So even 1 Fahrenheit, it is a big amount, because it needs a lot of energy to increase the temperature of the earth. So if it's a 1 Fahrenheit increase, it's a big deal. So we need to be concerned about it. Okay, and then the thing is that why I have discussed these global environmental trends, why we are discussing the climate change. The reason is that this climate change can have a negative effect on our daily life. So here I have explained it in terms of the three diagrams. With the climate change, with the increase in the temperature, there is a high probability of getting a wildfire. Okay, so this will destroy not only the temperature, but this fire will quickly destroy the natural resources. There is a high probability of having a drought in the world. And then there is a high probability of having storms in the world because of the climate change. So these are the few side effects of climate change. Okay, perhaps you are feeling depressed because of my negative thought, which is unfortunately facts and reality, but we need to face the facts and we need to face the reality to make the change. If we will avoid the facts and figures and reality, then we cannot make a change. So maybe it was depressing when I told you all these stories, or that how it is these different activities, economic and industrial activities, are affecting our beautiful earth and also the human being. But now it's a time to cheer up, and some good news. Not everything is negative, because there is awareness among the people, among the nation, among the leaders in the world, not only in the business world, but also in the political and social settings, that we need to protect the environment. So there are several, or I think hundreds of the examples of the good practices that has been taken by the government or the society. But I will explain a few of them, so that how we are taking some measures and how it is affecting positively the environment. Like, for instance, in the case of Pakistan, I'm originally from Pakistan. So our Prime Minister, he has taken a very good initiative by planting the trees. So for the protection of the climate. So of course, the other nations, they are also taking the measures. So here I show you the example of the US. So they have recently passed a very interesting bill. According to this bill, they should phase out the chemicals that have been used in the air conditioner, but this chemical negatively affect the environment. So they passed a bill that we should not use this chemical. We should avoid to use this chemical. So, which is very brave and very good decisions. And then this is very interesting. This is the example from my neighboring country, Sweden. So what Sweden has done, they have introduced the policy, which is known as Filskam. I don't know whether I pronounce it correctly or not. It's a Swedish word, but the meaning is very beautiful. It means that we should encourage the road transport. So what they have done, they have decided to impose more penalties and tariffs on the flights that will consume more CO2 emissions. So because of this, naturally, the people will move towards the road transport. So for instance, in Sweden, they have the two cities, the two largest and polluted cities, Gothenburg and Stockholm. So in Gothenburg and Stockholm, you can also travel by land and you can also take the flight. So if you take the flight, then it will emit about as much carbon dioxide as would be emitted by the 40,000 train trips. So you can imagine the difference. One flight that will emit the CO2 that is equal to 40,000 train trips. So if they have decided to impose the tariffs or the penalties on these flights, so that if people have an option to travel by road, they should switch from air to road. So this is a good news to protect the environment. And then this is the beautiful avenue in Paris. And here you will see that daily about 60,000 cars, they travel in this area. So here, the city, they have approved a budget of 250 million euro to add the greenery to this area. So it will make it more beautiful, and of course, it will make it more protective, environmentally protective from the pollution of the cars. And then the India in the top management, they have decided to take the initiatives to reduce the CO2 emission. And in India is number 3 in terms of the greenhouse gas emission. So this is a very important decision taken by the top management. But of course, it will negatively affect the coal industry of India. So as I told you that there are always some positive and negative aspects. So if you want to protect the environment, you have to compromise to some extent from some economic activities. And of course, in economic activities, you have an option to switch to another economic activity. For instance, instead of coal, you can use any other type. But if we cannot protect the environment, then we don't have any other choice. Okay, so these are the examples of some good news that how the governments and the societies, they are trying to protect the environment, or how they are trying to become more sustainable. So do you have any question from the previous session? If any confusion, or if you would like to add something or ask any question?
May I add some question, ma'am?
Yes, of course, please.
So my name is Theo. Thank you for your lecture before, which is really interesting for me. And I just really curious about one thing. As in right now era is the digital era, as we know, and the technology itself would be improving maybe in the next 5 years or 10 years. And as what I read from another journal about technology, they always give a big footprint on the technology itself, like the mechanicals and so on. And I believe that it would be grow until the next 5 years or 10 years. And I just want to know how about your opinion regarding to this and how to tackle these things, because if there are more like mechanical footprint, it will be not good for the environment also. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Very interesting question, because there is too much focus on digitalization. And when we talk about the sustainability, we always mention digitalization. And really, the common understanding is that it's done to make the more it's a more environmental protective practice. But as you said, that it also has some negative aspect. I remember about 10 years ago, I visited one of my colleagues' office, and he is from human resource, and his office was very clean. I could not find even a single paper. So only one computer and empty. And of course, he is not professor, so he does not need to have a books on his shelf and all these things. So I was surprised to see it, and he said, "Look, I'm protecting the environment. There is no paper." So we try to be more digitalized in order to become the environment, in order to reduce this papers work and all these things. But of course, it's not 100% environmentally practiced things. It has some drawbacks too. So in a few minutes, I will give you the example of the Google. They did this practice that they have used the equipment that are more that are less chemical emissions. And I also gave you the example of the USA, they have decided to phase out the chemical that has been used in the air conditioning. So, of course, with the technology, there comes a negative aspect too, and technology is expensive. And for the emerging countries and for the less developed countries, it's more difficult for them to adopt not only the technology, but also so much advanced that it causes less emission. So we need to put the resources, and we need to invest more on this. But of course, I agree with you that we cannot claim that anything is 100%, but at least it is better compared to the practice when we are not using the digital things or digital equipment.
Okay, thank you for your comments.
I'm sorry, I don't have any answer to this, because this is, that it's that what should we do, or but in general, we need to understand these things, and we need to see that what could be the alternative. So if we have a technology to reduce the paper waste, but then comes with some drawbacks, then what could be the next step? So then the scientist and the economist, they can take the action. But the important thing is awareness. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, ma'am, for your comment. It's insightful. Thank you.
Yes, I can see. Yes, please.
Yeah. May I ask the questions? It's regarding sachet economics. So actually, I've been knowing this for quite a while now from one of the environmentalists, Janice Lau. So she said that sachet economic refers to the practices, especially in the poorer communities. For example, a lot of people around Indonesia buying consumer products such as detergent, shampoo, beverages in a single-use packages, and thus it would create a harmful to the economics, especially for the waters like in the river beside their home, I like that. So I wanted to ask you regarding this sachet economics. So what do you think about sachet economic, and how do you think that is the solution to sachet economic? Thank you.
Can you please write what you have said? What economics? It's difficult for me to understand.
Okay. So it's regarding the sachet economic.
If I may help you, it's a small plastic, and it contains like a shampoo or maybe soap.
Okay. Now I got it. Yeah. So the things which we got it in sachet. Yeah.
Yes, true.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So can you please repeat what the environmentalist she recommended? Not to use this sachet economist packets.
So sachet economic is like what
that just mentioned. So it's, for example, a lot of people from the poor communities, especially, for example, Indonesia, buying consumer products such as detergent, milk, shampoo in a single-use packages, and eventually after they use it, they dispose it in the nearer river, so it will be polluted for a long terms. And a lot of like, for example, Unilever, P&G had created this in Indonesia, especially because a lot of people doesn't really have the money to buy the bottled ones. So what do you think about it in the sustainable economic? How do you think that we should have the solution for this problem?
Well, very interesting. You have given a very interesting example. And here I would want to introduce the concept circular economy. Actually, I wanted to include it in my lecture, but it was not possible to include it in 2 hours lecture. Hopefully in your course, you will learn it in detail. In the linear economics, like I explained to you the example of the definition of the supply chain. We get the raw material from the suppliers, like in this case, we are talking about the sachet detergents or sachet shampoo. So for instance, the company, they will get the raw material from the supplier, they will produce the sachet packets. They maybe don't know how it can affect the environment, or maybe they don't care, or they are more about their economic concerns, and then they will sell it to the consumer. And as you said, the consumer will throw it, because it's more easy to throw these packets near the rivers or everywhere, unfortunately. So then there is a concept of the circular economy. It is not the flat, that the raw material, product, and then the waste, because the end is the waste. This is the sachet which is lying near the river or anywhere. In the circular economy, they mentioned that we should not stop the waste, but we should reuse the waste. So we should take the measures that how can we reuse this sachet. First, how can we convince the companies not to produce this kind of the thing, which can be more polluted. So if, for instance, we cannot control it, then the other alternative is the concept given by the circular economy, that, okay, use the waste. So the supply chain, according to the circular economy, does not stop at the point where the product is wasted. Circular economy said that how to use or reuse or recycle the waste, and so that it come back and it should be used as a raw material. So I think the answer to your question is that first, the awareness among the business firms, among the people, for business firm not to produce such kind of the thing. For the people, if you are buying this kind of the things, please do not throw them. And then for the business and the economy, and for the leaders, that how can you apply the circular economy, that you should take care of the waste. So the supply chain, in fact, does not stop at the waste. It should take the circle. So in my university, we got a very big project. It's about the batteries, reuse of the batteries. How can we reuse the batteries? So it can be applicable to any product, not only for the battery, because the batteries, like car batteries or any other batteries, after using it, we will throw it as a waste. So the thing is that do not throw it as a waste, so that it can pollute the environment. So how can we reuse it? So in the developed countries, it's there are a number of measures to do this. For instance, in Norway, they are very strict. Like my trash or my garbage, I decorate it like the separate bag for the food, the separate bag for the plastic, the separate bag for the paper, and then the separate bag for the other trash. So we try not to mix up all these, so that anything that can be reused or recycled, it can be done. So these are the kind of the measures which we can take individually, socially, politically, economically. How to introduce the new business model, how to introduce the circular economy, how to do the awareness among the people to stop these things. Okay, very interesting.
Thank you so much for the answer.
Any other question? Because I can see more hands. Yeah.
Madam, may I?
Yes, please.
Okay, so I'd like to ask this more regarding to Indonesia. So basically, fossil fuels is one of the greatest investments that Indonesian elites today like to invest in. With the problem being that not only does it harm the area, but it also harms the people living surrounding it. So what I want to ask is, even though there's a lot of potential in green energy investment, what ways can we implement in order to make these sustainable energy investments more interesting to said elites and investors, so that we can be more sustainable in our usage of energy?
Yeah, a good question. It's it can be done different ways. It depends that how much it is affecting you. So the incentives, it can be done at the political level. The incentives, it can be done at the society level. So as I explained in the very beginning, why we need to be sustainable, then I explained certain factors. So some are the political factors. So for instance, if anything, like for instance, in the case of the fossil fuels, it's very strict at every level. And for instance, perhaps you have witnessed that some companies, when they deliver the products on their trucks, they have written on the trucks that we are environmentally sustainable. So, and there, for instance, in Norway, there is a more and more trend to use the electrical truck. Of course, it's expensive, but it's environmental friendly or less. Or the kind of the fuel that is that cause less emission. Like my field is maritime economist. So in the case of the international maritime organizations, they have put a kind of the law that by 2050 we need to have less emission on the sea, and for this purpose they have put the restrictions on the use of the fuels. So how can we convince people? It depends how much it is affecting. So as I told you that business firms can be convinced because they know that it will affect their reputation, it will affect their profit, it will affect their business. So they know that the electric truck is expensive, but still they are doing this kind of the investment to convince the customers that that we are doing the environmental friendly practices. So recently I did research on the ports in Agder. In Agder region, we have 3 ports. So like port of Mandal, port of Agder, and I visited one of the port, and they were very proud when I asked them that about their competition and what is the good thing. And they said that we are very proud that we are the most environmental friendly port in this region. We are using electric trucks, we are using electric cranes and all this. So the business firms, they know that it will affect their reputation, their profit. And if it is at the large scale, then we have certain laws at the government level, at the political level. So of course, we can provide incentives. We cannot impose it. It can be imposed on certain situation, but not in each situation. So as I said that, in my opinion, the first thing is the awareness. Do we have awareness or not? Like I attended one guest lecture a few months ago, in which the lady also talked about the reverse logistics. And reverse logistics is also a kind of the circular economy. So reverse logistics is that how can you use the waste or the product which is not used to go back to the initial point. So forward logistics is it is coming from the supplier to the customer. Reverse logistics, it's going back to the origin. So then she mentioned that the clothes that we wear and when we throw it in the trash, and I know that it's very general practice in most of the countries that we throw it in general trash. This is one of the biggest contributor in the pollution, in the environmental pollution. So like in Norway, we have a separate, not within the garbage area, but a separate containers where we can throw the clothes instead of throwing them in the garbage, because then they can be recycled. Especially, maybe you have seen it in your country too, like H&M. They have given the incentive, which is very interesting, that if I give them the clothes which I do not use it anymore, So they will give me the card which I can use for the future purchase, and it's a 10% discount on the price. So H&M is giving incentive to their customer that instead of throwing your clothes on the garbage, bring it back to us, and then they will reuse it to make it a new cloth. And then they give me for each, I have 3 bags, so I got 3 cards. So for each bag, I got 1 card, and I got a 10% discount for the future purchase. So there are number of ways where we can provide incentives to each other. So the government can provide incentives to the business firms can provide incentive to the customers, and customers in turn can put a kind of a pressure on the business firms that we prefer you because you are sustainable firms.
All right, thank you, ma'am.
Welcome. Any other question?
Miss Saeed?
Yes, please.
Okay. If we really wanna run a green business, we need to have a rally of green suppliers, just like you said. But as we know, companies who run green business are still growing. So sometimes they can running out of choice when it comes to pick suppliers. So do you know what negative impact that may arise when a company who claim they're green running out of green suppliers?
So the company that claim green and they end up with the non-green suppliers, this is what you ask?
Yes, because they're running out of choices.
Yes, of course. This is a very good question, because I think I would like to mention that there are a lot of things which we have mentioned, like in the discussion, in the talk, in the newspaper, in the textbook, but practically it is challenging to implement it. Maybe at the initial stage, but hopefully in future we can do this. So of course I agree with you that there is a possibility that, like for instance, I have a firm and I want to be a green, but I don't have a much choice to find the green suppliers. So I have a limited. So as I mentioned you in the very beginning, that in this kind of the situation, what firms can do, they can have a discussion with the suppliers. They can have a collaboration is one of the important part of the supply chain management, and then collaboration and information sharing become more important for the green supply chain. And when the United Nations has mentioned their sustainability goals, then they have also specifically mentioned the collaboration, because we cannot work alone. So other company cannot work alone and become a green if they cannot find the green suppliers. So of course, if they do not have a choice, they need to run the business, but they can at least convince their suppliers, and in the long run, they can look for the other suppliers. Like the big companies, like we have IKEA. IKEA has a code of conduct for their suppliers. So the suppliers, they have to follow the certain code of IKEAs if they want to do the business, and they have a regular check. If they will find that the supplier is not following it, they can switch it. But then IKEA is a big company and they have a choice, as you mentioned, but the other business firms might not have this kind of the choice. So in this situation, at least what we can do, we can try to convince the suppliers, and in the long run we can search the other suppliers. So these things, they cannot happen overnight. It will take time. But the important thing is that we should start doing it. So when we will start doing it in the next 5, 10, 20 years in the future, because when we talk about the green, we talk about the future. In future, hopefully we would be able to do some control by years. But of course, overnight is not possible, and there are a lot of challenges with it. Okay, any other question?
Thank you, Miss.
Welcome.
May I have a question, ma'am?
Yes, of course, please.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity. And also thank you for the great presentation. I have a question regarding, there are many examples of big companies that establish a sustainable program and etc. But in the other hand, I think for small, medium enterprises, there are not many and only few of them. So what do you think, like the first step for many SMEs over the world, so they can contribute to become a sustainable company? Thank you.
Welcome. Of course, yeah, I think in my opinion, the government, they should provide some kind of the incentives or subsidy for the business firms who are trying to do the sustainability practices. So of course, because for the small firms, it's not possible. Like I gave you the example of the IKEA. IKEA has the power, or IKEA has the choice to switch or to control the suppliers, but the small business firms cannot do it. So like the governments, they provide a loan for the business. So the governments, they can provide a subsidy or incentive for the green practices too. So I think they need a support at a large level. So very interesting discussion. Any other question?
Yes, ma'am, may I add something?
Yes, please.
First of all, thank you for the opportunity, and also thank you for the great presentation. I want to ask that I think some companies are facing a dilemma between making their products practical yet sustainable. I've seen like a company in, I think like Asia, making a pack of banana. It's with different level of ripeness, so people can eat every day without the fear of it being overripe. But at the same time, they have to use plastic to pack it. So I think that a lot of companies, no matter what their product is currently facing the dilemma. I want to know like your perspective about this. What strategy can the company use to balance between sustainable business but also practical products? Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Very interesting question. I agree with you. They are facing the dilemma, and sometimes, unfortunately, companies claim that they are sustainable, but in fact, they are not, because they know that the sustainability is a brand name. So they can, if they can put sustainability, then people will be impressed. And as I said, it's challenging and difficult to implement it because of the resources, because of the awareness, and because of the choices. So I think, in my opinion, we should take some steps. The plastic has been used in the whole world. It will take some time to do some to complete removal or to convince the people. Even in Norway, it's a developed country, and in some shops we have the options of the other bags, and but in most of the cases we have these plastic bags. So not only the companies, I think we all are facing this dilemma that when I go to the shop, I know that I have an option either to buy a little bit expensive bag or either to buy the plastic bag. So we all are facing this, but in my opinion, we should take some steps, and then we try to do it at a larger scale. So because these kind of the things, they need resources, they need money, and they need awareness, and we need some time to do it. But at least do something at the individual level, at the business level, at the individual nation level, and sooner or later we will reach this point. For instance, when I explained to you this picture of the planetary boundaries, then in terms of the ozone layer, luckily the initiatives at the national and international level, they have protected it. So the same can be done for the other environmental aspect. But I totally agree with you that this is a dilemma, and this dilemma is because of the resources, because of the money, and because of the choices. But we should start. Even a small step can become a big step in the future.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. It's a very nice to listen to the different examples and the challenges which you have realized the business firms are facing. As I mentioned, that it's very easy, just several things it's very easy to discuss and talk, but practically it's very challenging, but still we need to start the process. Okay, any other comment or question? Okay, well, nice, interesting. I will share my screen again, and then I will complete the rest of the lecture. So I hope you have already heard about the United Nations Sustainability Goals. So whenever we talk about the sustainability, it is not possible that we do not mention the United Nations Sustainability Goals. There are a number of the sustainability goals, in total 17. And then the interesting thing is that there are at least 115 sub goals in total of these 17 goals. So then these 17 goals, if we want to make the things more easy to understand, we can broadly divide them into 7 categories. So the first category is the health. So there are some goals that are related to human health. For instance, there should not be no poverty. So of course, when we claim that there should not be no poverty, we know that millions of people are living below the poverty, but we have set the goal, and hopefully at some point in time, we will reach this goal. Then another goal related to the health is zero hunger. So everyone should be given the food, and then good health and well-being. Every citizen has a right to get the good health services. Then the quality educations. So everyone has a right to get the education, not only the education, but good quality educations. And then the gender equality, both male and female should be given the representations in the job, in the economics, and in the social life. And then at the end, clean water and sanitation. So every person has a right to get the access to clean water. So when I show you the picture of the river where there was a lot of garbage near the water, or when your class fellow mentioned the example of the sachet economics, then this shows that how it can affect the clean water access, and then everyone has a right to get the clean water. And then the other broad category is the economic system. Under this broad category, we had that, for instance, everyone should have access to affordable and clean energy. So it means that the energy, it should not be only clean, but it should be economical and cheap. It should not be expensive. Then everyone has a right to do the decent work, and they should be given the right for the growth. So the work environment should be decent, and they should be given the opportunity for the growth and for the progress. And then industry innovation and infrastructure. So the industry should be innovative, and the infrastructure should be developed. Then we have other rights, the broad category, we can put it in the justice. So under the justice category, we have reducing inequality. So when we talk about the reducing inequality, it covers all kind of the inequality. For instance, inequality between developed and developing countries in terms of economics, in terms of education, in terms of access. And then we have justice. Everyone should be given a justice. And then strong institutions, the institutions should be strong. And then another broad category is the cities. So we know that more and more people are migrating from the villages to the cities. So the cities should be sustainable, and the communities should be sustainable. And then we have another category, which is the consumption. So everyone should be provided responsible consumptions and production of goods. So we should have a right to the consumptions and productions of goods. And then we have a category which is the global ecosystem. Under the global ecosystem, we talk about the climate actions. So we should take the actions to protect the climate and the environment. And then life below water. Here you can see this one, life below water. So this means that the species under the water, they should be protected, because when we pollute the water, they also affect the health of the species in water. And then life on land. Of course, the life on land should be protected, and the land should be protected, because I told you that when I explained this planetary boundaries, then there was also one aspect about the use of the land. So the human beings are using more and more land, which is one natural resources for agriculture and for production. So, which is affecting the environment and the resources. And at the end, we have a partner for change, that is the collaboration. So one of the 17 goal of the United Nations sustainability goal is the collaboration, because as we had discussed during this short discussion, that we cannot do anything alone. So we need a collaboration. For instance, business firms, they need a cooperation from the government, from the people, and everyone need to collaborate for the sustainability. So these are the 17 sustainability goals, which I have divided into 7 broad categories to make them a bit more simple. Now, my question is that, would you like to say anything about these United Nations sustainability goals? Do you think they cover the environment only, or it's something different you have listened or observed?
Maybe I would like to add something about the SDGs. May I?
Yes, of course, please.
Okay, so I think about the SDGs itself, it does not cover only what we think of the environment itself, because we see that a lot of things from quality education, gender equality, something that's never been spoken about in a really long time, and to bring up something that is really a thing by somebody, I think it's just an integration about what we had perceived and what we had been discussed a lot but hadn't been really discussed. So I think it's the SDGs itself, it's containing about the mission and vision of the world and how it should be perceived in the next 5-10 years from now on.
Yeah, very good, very intelligent overview you have given. Very nice. I totally agree with you, because whenever we talk about the sustainability, the thing is that whenever we talk about the sustainability, we always think about the environment. So that's why you mentioned that like education or the health or there are many things in this sustainability goals which are not directly relevant to the environment. And because of these reasons, I have divided them into broad categories. So I think the category which I mentioned, global ecosystem, under this category, I mentioned 3 sustainability goals out of 17. These are the climate actions, life below water, and life on land. So here we are talking about the environment. So the reason I asked this question is that this also shows the difference between sustainability and green supply chain, or in general, the difference between sustainability and green. Because interesting thing is that sometimes, or in most of the cases, these 2 terms are used interchangeably. So when we said green, we think that green means sustainable, or when we said sustainable, so we thought that it's talking about the environment. So there are a lot of definitions or lot of terms and lot of debates. But in my opinion, sustainability is a broader concept compared to green. So sustainability covers many aspects, and one of the aspect is the green. Either it's a green supply chain or other thing. So green practices related to the environmental practices. So sustainability is broad, and the green is one part of it, which is more relevant to the environment. So that's why, for instance, in United Nations Sustainability Goal, we have a justice, reducing inequality, strong institutions. These have nothing to do with the green or with the environment, but they are the part of the sustainability goals. So what I'm trying to say, that if we go more deep into the subject, then there is a difference between the sustainability and green. And the same applies to the supply chain. Okay, thank you. Okay, then we have a corporate social responsibility, and the corporate social responsibility, in very simple terms, it covers 3 aspects. That is, the business firms, they should care about the economics, because of course this is their main business. They should take care of the environment, and then they should take care of the society. So in a very simple term, corporate social responsibility is defined as a three dimensions: people, society, and environment. Then I will show you this diagram. Again, this diagram, it is not a very new diagram. It was published about 30 years ago, but it explains the corporate social responsibility in a more detailed way. So the first step is the economic responsibility. So of course, we know that the main function of the business firm is the production of goods and services. And of course, their objective is to get the profit. So the first responsibility of the business firm is to make sure that the products and services would be provided, and they will earn the profit on it. And then after economics come the legal responsibilities, that they should obey the law. So not only the law imposed by the government, but the society's modifications of rights and wrong, and they should obey all kind of the law, the national law or the international law. For instance, unfortunately, in many countries, child labor is not forbidden. So it is not illegal to have a child labor. Like in my country, in Pakistan, it's very common to have a child labor. And although formally it is considered as illegal, but still people are practicing it at home or in the factories. So, but we know that internationally it is very strict law. So we should follow the international law too. And then we have ethical responsibilities. So we should do what is right and what is fair, and we should not try to provide harm to anyone. So in the ethical responsibilities comes any kind of the bribe or any kind of the unethical. For instance, child labor, in my opinion, it is not only illegal, but it is also unethical that you exploit the situation of any family by asking them that their children should work. And then at the end, be a good corporate citizen. So contribute resources to the community, improve the quality of the life. So these are the corporate social responsibility that should be followed by the business firms. And it should not only concern about the economic responsibility, but also their legal and ethical and other aspects too. Now I will give you some examples. We are running out of the time, so I will be quick. So there are several companies that are doing corporate social responsibility successfully. So I have mentioned some of them. I would like to mention the Google. So for instance, the Google is known for its environmental friendly initiatives, but also they also follow the ethical standards. For instance, their CEO is known as a very outspoken, and he stands up against social issues, for instance, including former President Donald Trump's anti-Muslim comments. So it means that they are not only taking the steps to the environmental friendly, but they are also following the ethics that everyone should be given a respect. So Google earned the highest score in the corporate social responsibility, and they have also committed over 1 billion to renewable energy projects and to reduce the environmental impact. And then we have Coca-Cola. So Coca-Cola have made major changes to their supply chain practices, including investing in new alternative fuel trucks, for instance, that are less CO2 emitter, or the electric car. And they are able to create a 25% reductions in their carbon footprint by 2020. Then we have a Ford company. So Ford company plans to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions by using their EcoBoost engine to increase the fuel efficiency. And they also plan to introduce 40 electrical cars by 2020. And then we have Faizal. We know this company because of the COVID-19 vaccinations. So the company, they have taken the initiatives to derive the awareness for non-infectious disease, as well as providing healthcare for female and children who otherwise would not have the care they need. So you will see that these companies are taking care of different aspects of social corporate responsibility in addition to their main business. And then at the end, we have a Starbucks. So the Starbucks, it has joined the UN Refugee Agency, and the company, they support effort to reach the refugee candidates, and they are planning to hire about 10,000 refugees by 2022. So it means that they are giving preference to the refugees so that they can have access to the decent life. So you will see that these are the different ways of following the corporate social responsibility or having a sustainable, which is not only specifically related to the environment in a broader sense, but also following the ethics, taking care of the health of other, or taking care of the unrepresented community like refugees. Now I will give you a brief introduction about the green supply chain management. So when we talk about the green supply chain management, then green supply chain management, it's basically integrating the eco-friendly concepts in all part of the supply chain. For instance, the customers should be green, like I gave you the example of the H&M, that they provide the incentives in the form of the discount card to their customers. Then the transport should be green, for instance, electric trucks. The warehouse should be green, the packaging should be green, manufacturing should be green, purchasing should be green, and suppliers should be green. And of course, we know that practically it is challenging that everything is green. But of course, if we have a goal, and if we set the goal, then we can take the steps to reach that goal, no matter how long it will take. So in addition to the environmental benefits, green supply chain management can offer the benefits to the company in terms of the reduction in the waste. It also lowers transportation cost, because in order to reduce the carbon footprint, the companies, they prefer to reduce the shipment size, and they also prefer to reduce the transport miles covered by the company. For instance, instead of buying it from the international supplier, buy it from the local supplier. So all these kind of the measures that are taken to protect the CO2 emission, they will result in the lower transportation cost, which is a profit for the company. So that's why these kind of the activities are profitable for the companies too. And then at the end, reputation. Reputation is very important. We know that the customers are the most important player in any supply chain. If the customer will not buy the product, then the supply chain cannot exist in the market. So it affects the reputation if we follow the green supply chain. So 81% of consumers around the world, they believe that business must contribute in improving the environment. So this is a kind of the incentives or pressure from the customers on the business firms. Then I will briefly explain the literature. So the green supply chain management is a quite new concept. It started to gain the attentions and the popularity in 2000, in early 2000. So it's about 21 years old. And the research has been done for the last 2 decades, but still there is a lot of things that we need to explore for the future studies. And you must have realized it during the question and answer discussion that there are many things which we don't know how we can implement or how can we control it. So we need to do a research in this area. So one researcher, he classified the literature so far in the field of the green supply chain management into following 5 categories. The first one is the conceptual and theory development. So this is a new subject. So it is still in the development phase. And if we read the literature, we can find at least 22 definitions of the green supply chain. So you can see that at least we cannot find one specific definition. So people are defining it in different ways. So this also shows that how rich and how much potential it has for growth. And then they have discussed the drivers and barriers of the green supply chain. So what are the drivers? For instance, regulations, market pressures, suppliers, customers, competitors, and society, they are all the drivers for the green supply chain. And what are the barriers which we had discussed during the question and answer sessions too? That if the firms want to do the green practices, unfortunately, they might face the lack of top management commitment and support. They also face the lack of training in green supply chain management, how to do or implement this practice. And then they also face the resistance to adopt the new advanced technology, because usually the technologies are used to avoid the environmental pollutions. Then they also have a financial constraints, because all these things need money and resources. So these are some important barriers. And then another category is the collaboration, which is very important if we want to do the green practices. So many papers in the green supply chain management literature, they said that the improvement of environmental performance through the collaboration of the different partners is important, which includes suppliers, corporations, customer corporations, and the corporations from the logistics service provider. So of course, without having these corporations, it is not possible to implement it. And then another category is that in the research, mainly the researchers, they have used the mathematical model and optimizations model, because in the mathematical models and optimization models, you do not need a rich data. You can do the simulation with a very small set of the data. So they do not have rich data in the green supply chain management. So that's why they are applying the optimizations and mathematical models. And then at the end, the main category is the assessment or evaluation of the green supply chain management practices and performance. So the companies, for instance, evaluate their suppliers, or the government evaluate their companies, whether they are doing it, they are practicing green policies or not. So the literature suggests that the practice of the green, it helps firms to achieve superior performance, not only in terms of the environmental performance, but also in terms of economic performance and operational performance and competitive. So their evaluation shows that the companies will profit more if they will do the green practices. So this diagram shows the same thing which I just explained, so I can just skip it. So then there are future areas which need our attention. For instance, if you want to do the research, then what areas you can cover. So the future trend is that the research on drivers or barrier is declining, because they have already done a lot of research on this topic. And then there is a growing trend of applying mathematical optimizations model, because these can help the decision maker to make the decisions. And there is also a consistent growth in the evaluation of the green supply chain management practices and performance, because it is very difficult and challenging to evaluate it, to measure it. For instance, if you look at the sustainability goals, 17 sustainability goals, and then we have a 115 sub goals. So United Nations, they have mentioned some variables that can be quantified, but still it is challenging. And if we can quantify, then how to collect the data is another challenge. Then there is a lack of studies in the literature that investigates the green supply chain management based on the viewpoint of the partners, such as suppliers, customers, logistics service provider, and manufacturers' point of view. So we need to consider their point of view or their opinion too. And then there is also a lack of research on big data, because one thing is the non-availability of the data, and the other, it has been overlooked by the researchers. So these I have mentioned the references which I have used for these lectures, and any question or answer, please feel free to ask. We have 1 minute left.
Ma'am, may I state an opinion instead of asking question?
Yes, please.
So yeah, I think the awareness of this sustainability is increasingly over the world. Why? Because maybe, as you know, the Tokyo Olympics, which is happening right now, they has the Tokyo Olympic sustainability, which is they made all of the the medals is recycled from the metals, and also the hotels, which is the bed, and also the all their equipment is from recycle and reuse. And as you know, they have this theme, be better, be together, for the planet and the people. So yeah, I think the awareness of this sustainability, it's going bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
that's my opinion.
Yes, you are right. And I think the social media, it has played a very big role, and it can play a very big and positive role in the awareness. So, yeah. And these kind of the international events, because majority of the people, especially young generations, they are very keen to watch Olympics. So when they hear these things, then they also, it's a kind of the education for them, that how can we apply the green practices.
Yeah,
Very nice.
That's true. Thank you, ma'am.
Any other comment or question? So I hope you will get access to this PowerPoint presentation, and you can look at the references too. So if you want to read anything in detail, you can get the access to the articles, and the things which I have taken from the other sources. I try to mention the source in the form of the link to the web page. But if anything is missing, please feel free to send me an email. You can find my email address on the first page of the PowerPoint.
Sure, thank you, ma'am.
Welcome.
Okay, I think our time is up. I really apologize, Dr. Naima. Thank you very much for the interesting lecture. Indeed, it has been a very fruitful discussions between you and all the participants. We were discussing about what is the green supply chain management, why should we be sustainable, the global environment trends, and it's also about the importance and of green supply chains, and finally about the future trends in green supply chain management research. Hopefully after these lectures, our awareness to the sustainable economies, specifically about the green supply chain management, will be increased, because as long as Elon Musk has not been able to build a civilization on Mars, then, as he said before, there is no planet B. We only have one Earth that we need to protect at all costs. Okay. Once again, on behalf of Faculty of Economics and Business, Universitas Gadjah Mada, I want to say thank you very much for Dr. Naima Saeed for your time, for your really inspiring lectures. We hope someday that we can meet again in other occasions. Okay.
Hopefully.
Hopefully. Okay.
Okay.
That's all for me. Yeah. Have a nice day.
Have a nice day. Bye bye.
Yeah. Bye bye.